Here is the thing nobody ever says out loud. The loneliest moments of your life probably did not happen when you were alone. They happened in rooms full of people, at parties where everyone was laughing, at family dinners where conversations flowed easily around you, at work events where you smiled and said the right things and drove home afterward feeling hollowed out in a way you could not explain. Alone was easier. Alone at least made sense, but surrounded by people. People who liked you, people who meant well, and still feeling completely unseen, that is a specific quiet devastation that most people never find the words for. You have been in those rooms. You know the feeling, the performance of being present while something inside you watches from a distance, the smile that does not quite reach the part of you that is sitting there wondering why you feel so far away from everything, and the guilt of it because you are supposed to be grateful, you are supposed to be enjoying this, you are surrounded by people who care about you. And yet, this is not a flaw in your personality. I came across this recently, and it names something I had felt my entire life, but never had words for. This is not ingratitude or antisocial wiring or depression in the clinical sense. This loneliness in a crowd is pointing at something specific, something that was missing long before tonight's party, long before this room, long before you were old enough to know what to call it. Psychologists call what you experience in those rooms a failure of attunement. Not a failure in you, but the echo of one that happened to you. Attunement is the experience of being truly met by another person, not just heard, not just included, but felt. The sense that someone else has made genuine contact with your interior world. Research shows that humans do not just need proximity to feel connected. They need to feel known. And when attunement was missing in your earliest relationships, the nervous system develops a specific kind of loneliness that physical company cannot touch. Your nervous system learned early what connection felt like in your house. Maybe it was surface level, love that was present but never quite got below the surface. Maybe it was inconsistent, warmth that came and went without explanation. Maybe it was conditional. You were welcomed when you performed correctly and quietly, less welcome when you didn't. In any of those environments, your nervous system learned that being around people and being truly seen were two completely different things, and it built a quiet, persistent awareness of that gap that it carries into every room you enter. There is also something called the default mode network, a part of your brain that becomes active when you are not fully engaged, the part that generates the inner narrator, the self-reflection, the quiet observer that watches your life from slightly outside it. For people who grew up having to monitor their environment carefully, this network runs constantly. Even in company, even in laughter, there is always a part of you watching. Never fully inside the moment, always slightly separate. Rilke wrote, "It is good to be solitary, for solitude is difficult. That something is difficult must be a reason the more for us to do it. But the solitude you feel in a crowd is not the chosen kind. It is the kind that arrives uninvited, in rooms where you did not ask for it, among people who would be hurt to know it was there. And that makes it one of the loneliest experiences that exists, because you cannot explain it without sounding ungrateful, and you cannot fix it by simply being around more people. It shows up at every social event where you leave earlier than you planned, not because you didn't enjoy yourself, but because the gap between how connected everyone else seemed and how disconnected you felt became too wide to keep performing across. It shows up in relationships where someone loves you genuinely, and you still feel, at some quiet depth, unreachable. It shows up at 2 a.m. when you have had a full day of human contact, and you are more alone than if you had spoken to no one. The exhaustion of it is real. The grief of it is real. And almost no one knows it is happening. This is the part that most psychology channels completely skip. You might find yourself leaving social situations and feeling more drained than if you had stayed home. Not because people exhaust you, but because performing connection without experiencing it is some of the most tiring work a person can do. You might find that one-on-one conversations feel completely different from group ones. That in a smaller space, with the right person, something in you relaxes that you didn't know was tense. You might find that you have many acquaintances and very few people who know what is actually happening inside you, that your social life is wide, and your felt sense of being known is narrow. You might find that when someone does genuinely see you, really see you, not just the performance, it feels almost unbearable, too much, too exposed, because being known was never fully safe. You might find that you are better at knowing others than letting yourself be known, that your curiosity about people is genuine, but your willingness to be the subject of that same curiosity feels dangerous. None of this is who you are. It is what you learned. Healing from this kind of loneliness does not come from being around more people. It comes from letting one person, in one moment, see something true about you that you would normally keep hidden. Learning to identify safe people is where this begins. Not people who are impressive or popular or good at social situations. People who are curious about you specifically, who ask follow-up questions, who remember what you said last time, who make the space small enough that the performance feels unnecessary. They are rarer than they should be, and they are worth looking for. Inner child work is part of this too. Sitting with the part of you that first learned that being around people and being seen were two different things. Asking it gently, what would it have felt like to be truly known? What would you have needed to feel that? That question is not rhetorical. It is the beginning of knowing what to look for now. And therapy, real, consistent therapy, is where you practice being known by one person before you can trust it in more. Where you say the true thing and watch someone receive it without flinching. Where the gap between proximity and connection starts slowly to close. Rumi wrote, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." That field is not a physical place. It is what becomes possible when you stop performing and start being. When someone meets you there, when you let them, the crowd loneliness does not disappear overnight, but it becomes less total. And less total is where healing starts. The goal is not to be fixed. It is to become whole. You are not broken for feeling alone in a crowd. You are someone who learned that presence was not the same as connection, and who has been grieving that gap ever since. There is a community of people who feel exactly this way, who have left exactly those parties early, who have driven home in exactly that hollowed-out quiet. You are part of that community. You always were. Tell me in the comments, when do you feel most alone? Not in what circumstances, just when. Someone reading your answer will feel less alone because of it.